stick that was?
Yeah.
It was very powerful, wasn't it? Just bread for the world all of a sudden was displayed across the cross. It's like how appropriate and perfect. You know, the funny thing is, I don't know about the rest of you, but I have a lot of guilt about the grocery store. And here's what happens to me. I think about the people that I met in seminary from other countries all over the world. And so one person that comes to mind is a young man from Uganda, and he was telling me about how during his life and how his brother was taken by soldiers when he was a child to become a child soldier, and his brother finally managed to get free and come back home, and they didn't have any food to eat, and he describes how his father was a minister, and he decided that he was going to be a minister, so he came to Asbury to go to seminary, and you hear about how he arrives in the middle of the night to this town in the middle of Kentucky, and is like standing there on a dark corner where the airport shuttle dropped him off, and he has no idea where to go, and how they put him in a dorm room, and all of a sudden they're bringing food and clothing for him to wear, and he's never seen anything like this, and he was so surprised to be in one of those really small dorm rooms and think he gets to live there all by himself. He was just shocked, about how amazing that was. And I think about those folks, and then I think about the process of going to the grocery store. And here we are, and first we get our cart, because we're going to have so much food, we can't carry it all, right? And we go, take our cart, and we drive through the aisles, and the peanut butter aisle, for some reason, holds special significance to me. Because I go to that aisle, and I see that there are 800 kinds of peanut butter, and I feel bad about that. Like guilt, like an overpronounced sense of guilt about that. That we've got hundreds of types of peanut butter, and then I think of that poor kid from Uganda, and then we go out into the parking lot, and this is the part that really irks me, y'all. This is like a pet peeve of mine. After taking our food and putting it in the car, for some people, it's just too much to put the cart away. Oh, I'm just so exhausted from pushing all my extra food around. It was just too much for me to take it and put it away. Oh, y'all we're so blessed.
Amen.
We're so blessed. And this all came to a head one day. I've gone to breakfast in the cafeteria, and I walk in, and my friend Elizabeth was the attendant at breakfast, and I'm reaching for the bag, and I find the two ends of the loaf, and I'm like, oh, Elizabeth, there's no bread left. And I put the sack down, and then the kid from Uganda comes up behind me and goes, oh no, Michael, there's some bread here, look. And then his whole story flashed in front of my mind, and I was like, you're right, how silly of me, I must not have felt it in there. And he goes, you can't fool me, Michael. I know Americans don't eat the ends of the bread. And I laughed, and I had breakfast, and I went back to my room, and I felt awful. We don't eat the ends of the bread. I know some people don't come to me afterwards and say, I eat the ends of the bread. A lot of people don't, okay? A lot of people don't. And I felt so guilty, like it's perfectly good food, We're so blessed. We're so overwhelmingly blessed, And then we come to this rather tricky passage that we've been living in for the last few weeks with Jesus. He feeds the 5,000, and they are ready for Jesus to feed them for the rest of their lives, right? And they're ready for Jesus to move in and provide them bread. And Jesus has finally come to a head, and he says to them, you know what? It's not the bread that you want. It's not the manna that Moses provided for the children of Israel. It's not what you want. I'm what you feast on. And I know it sounds rather tricky. If you eat my flesh and you drink my blood, then you shall be my people. And yes, the communion liturgy is kind of sort of drawn up into that particular passage. And strangely enough, as you hear that story, it's a little off-putting, isn't it, this concept of eating flesh and drinking blood. It's literally off-putting. But if you think about it, if you put it into your mind to this ancient world where they were much closer to death than we are, it would be nothing for them to slaughter their own food and to be present when that happens. They know in a way that maybe our Western culture doesn't know that it is blood and it is flesh that nourishes us. That's what it is. It's the very basis of life, that one creature gives life to another. And Jesus is telling them, I can give you life forever. I'm what nourishes you. And if you think about it, all of us were created in God's own image, and God created us for a relationship with himself. It's hardwired into us. In fact, neuroscientists today have discovered that there seems to be a part of the brain that connects to religion. That there is a part of the brain that just tends to work and to form us in religious ways. So that literally the hardwiring of the brain is supposed to connect us to spiritual experience. And when we think about that, and when we look at that, we realize just how much we were built to be a part of God, and God to be a part of us, and how much nothing in this world can nurture us or nourish us enough as God's own presence. The ancient church had an image of Christ that is, well, it's quite striking. They often referred to Jesus as, ready for this? They refer to Jesus as the pelican of God. The pelican of God. Now, are you shocked? Are you surprised? Why would they make such a reference? The reason is that the ancients would watch pelicans, and what pelicans do is they take fish and they masticate it in their mouth and then they feed their young with it. But what the ancients thought was happening was that the mother pelican was chewing her own flesh to feed her children, because that's kind of what it looked like. And they had this image, and they thought that is the perfect image for Jesus, right? Because Jesus he gives of himself. He contributed his own flesh. He died and he suffered for us. And that is what nourishes us and gives us strength. And the reality is, and the difficult and the strugglesome thing for us is that sometimes we can be so myopic that we can just think about Jesus in such a way that he's only here to feed me, right? I'm going to church, so Jesus is here to feed me. And we can reduce our gospel of Christ, and we can take it and we can reduce it down to just a special kind of self-help group, right? We're here to get what we need in order to be good in the world, to reach, self-actualization. We love to turn the gospel into something that it truly, truly isn't. Some sort of self-serving and self-destroying anathema of itself. Sorry, that was a big fancy word. It's the first word that came to mind. Anathema means to be outside of. If you're anathema, you're basically heretical. We turn the Bible into something bad when we make it all about ourselves. When we make coming to the Christian church all about being refilled and not about what Jesus seems to make it about. Think of what he's saying to these people. Yes, I gave you bread and wine. Yes, I gave you 5 loaves and 2 fishes. And yes, every single one of you ate to your fill. But I'm here to give you that food which lasts into eternal life. And churches can do this too. They can get stuck in the bread and loaves and fishes part, and they can forget the bread for the world part, can't they? We can become a people who are constantly building programs and constantly, creating food safety, and there is nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with that. Remember why Jesus fed them to begin with, right? Looking upon them, he had compassion on them and thought these people are hungry, and so he feeds them, right? Jesus is moved by compassion. Oh my goodness, church, should we not be moved by compassion? Shouldn't we see the hungry and the sick and the dying, and shouldn't we feel some sense of ownership, some sense of, I want to help you, I want to be there for you, I want to be your neighbor? Yes, absolutely. But underneath all of it, underneath the physical hunger is this deep and powerful desire for God. And we also have to meet that need as well. We also have to be the people that share with our neighbors that truth as well. It's interesting because you hear these stories from pastors, and they'll say, yeah, this church, whatever church, fill in the blank, isn't really into ministry. And then they'll say, but once a year they have a chicken dinner. And what they're doing is, they probably had their intake meeting and they asked this question of the church. They said, well, what ministries are you really proud of? And they'll say, we have a chicken dinner, and 500 people, 800 people, 1,000 people, we're famous for it, 1 million people walk through our church doors. And then they stop. And what does it do? Oh, raises money for missions and for the UMW, right? Is there anything wrong with UMW? No. Is there anything wrong with the missions? No. Is there anything wrong with fried chicken? No. No. But do you hear what's missing? That thing that really nourishes, right? Church, and so when pastors hear this, and they hear things like, oh, we do a chicken dinner, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with it at all. The question comes, are we really in the business of offering Christ to people? Now I want you to know why this is coming up now. It's coming up now because this was a scripture read for the day. It's also coming up because we're looking at ourselves right now. We're doing a bit of navel gazing. And the question that we're going to have to ask ourselves what all the ministries of our church are, where is our, as Pastor LeJoe calls it, God factor, right? Where are we offering this Christ, this true nourishment, this real food? Where are we doing that? We'll look at every ministry of our church, everything that we do, from the car show to the buddy packs, and we're going to ask the question, how do we see Jesus in the midst of this? And rather than being critical, rather than being, rather than disrespecting these ministries, instead what I think we're going to find is an incredible amount of delight and exploration. We're going to be able to say, hey, we could really offer Jesus if we. We could really offer that thing that nourishes if we. Oh, I know that Jesus is in the midst of this because I saw this. Don't you want to be the church that feeds the hungry and feeds the hungry's soul? Isn't that who you want to be? That's who I want to be. That's who I want to be more than anything. You know, as I think about that kid from Uganda, here's what ended up happening with him. It could only happen at Asbury, I'll tell you the truth. We went together to see the Christmas lights in downtown Lexington, Kentucky. And as we're going along, he saw a homeless person and people walking past the homeless person. And he suddenly felt this tremendous calling to help the homeless in America. And then he met a Russian girl who was there for seminary, and he married the Russian girl, and now he and the Russian girl are at Redbird Mission doing ministry in America.
Nice.
Isn't that great? A Ugandan marries a Russian and they do ministry in America. I love it. Isn't God astounding, you know? But the reality of today's story, the reality of what we read in the story of Jesus today, is the powerful truth that what we really need, what we really desire, what we were in fact designed and created for, is a relationship with God. And that is what Jesus offers us. And that is what really nourishes us. And that is what we are to extend to the world. So I invite you to do this one thing this week. Ask yourself, how am I offering Jesus to the world? Strangely enough, even as I say these words, you'll remember that is in fact our mission statement, right? To make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Oh, why don't we just look it up? In fact, why don't you pull out your new announcement sheet and we'll just kind of say it together this morning. You will find in your announcement sheet it says Community News and it says our mission and vision right underneath this. It's right there. Why don't we just say it together? And that's how we'll end our sermon today. I know it's small. Don't worry, I'll fix it next week. For those among you who are like, I didn't look at that. Any of you far-sighted, you need me, I'll hold it back here. Oh, it's on the screen? You are on it. Amazing back there. The mission of the United Methodist Church is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. At Portage First United Methodist Church, we live out that mission when we love God, love others, and offer Jesus. There's the last part. Offer Jesus. Offer the food that truly nourishes. Amen.